Something appears to be changing in the relationship between Prince Harry and the British royal family. For years, the story seemed simple. Harry and Meghan left royal life behind. They moved across the Atlantic, built a new life in California, signed major media deals, and spoke publicly about their experiences inside the royal family. But now, after years of tension, public criticism, legal battles, and growing distance, a very different question is beginning to emerge. Could Prince Harry actually be looking for a way back? And if that is true, what would that mean for Meghan Markle, King Charles, and most importantly, Prince William? Because behind the headlines, there appears to be a much bigger story developing. And this time, the most interesting part may not be what Harry and Meghan are saying publicly. It may be what is being said privately. Recent reports surrounding Harry's relationship with his family have created a confusing picture. Some reports suggest that Harry remains determined to rebuild his relationship with his father, King Charles. Others suggest that the road back into royal life could be far more complicated than simply showing up in Britain and asking for forgiveness. And then there is Meghan. Her position in any possible reconciliation remains one of the biggest unanswered questions. Because if Harry truly wants to rebuild his relationship with the royal family, the question becomes obvious. Would he do it together with Meghan? Or could Harry eventually attempt to repair those family connections on his own? That question has become increasingly interesting because the public narrative surrounding the Sussexes has changed dramatically over the past few years. When Harry and Meghan first stepped away from royal duties, they appeared determined to create a completely independent future. They were no longer going to live under the restrictions of royal life. Instead, they wanted freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to work, freedom to choose where they lived, and freedom to tell their own story. But telling that story came with consequences. Their interviews attracted enormous global attention. Their documentary became a major talking point. Harry's memoir revealed deeply personal details about his family and his life inside the royal family. The Sussexes became one of the most discussed couples in the world. But there was a problem. The more the story continued, the more difficult it became to separate Harry and Meghan's personal lives from their public brand. They were no longer simply members of the royal family who had stepped away. They had become a global media story of their own. And that created a strange situation. On one hand, they wanted privacy. On the other hand, their lives were increasingly connected to television, interviews, books, documentaries, and public statements. That contradiction has remained at the center of the Sussex story. Now, years later, Harry appears to be facing a very different reality. His relationship with his family remains complicated. His relationship with his brother, Prince William, is widely understood to be deeply strained, and his relationship with his father has also been affected by years of distance. Yet despite everything that has happened, Harry has continued to express a desire to reconnect with his family. The question is why? Is it because he genuinely misses them? Is it because he wants his children to have a relationship with their royal relatives? Or is there something else happening behind the scenes? According to some reports and royal commentators, Harry may now be realizing that the door to his old life is not completely closed. But that does not mean the door is wide open. King Charles has reportedly remained more open to reconciliation with his son than some other members of the royal family. However, any return to royal life would almost certainly require enormous changes. There would have to be trust, there would have to be boundaries, and most importantly, there would have to be a willingness to move forward without constantly reopening the wounds of the past. That is where the situation becomes extremely complicated, because Harry and Meghan have spent years publicly discussing their experiences with the royal family. And for some members of the institution, those words may be impossible to simply forget. Imagine being asked to welcome someone back into your private life after years of public disagreements. Could trust really be rebuilt? Could family members sit together again without worrying about what might be revealed later? And could Harry return to Britain without bringing the entire history of the Sussex controversy with him? these are not easy questions. And then there is Prince William. The future King of Britain has remained largely silent about the private details of his relationship with his brother. But their relationship has been one of the most closely watched family stories in the world. William and Harry grew up together. They experienced the loss of their mother together. They stood side by side at major royal events. For years, they appeared to be extremely close, but today their relationship is believed to be far more distant. And if Harry really does want a meaningful reconciliation with the royal family, repairing his relationship with William may be the biggest challenge of all. Because a relationship between brothers cannot be repaired simply through one meeting. It takes time, it takes trust, and it requires both sides to believe that the past will not simply repeat itself. That is why any potential reconciliation between Harry and the royal family is likely to be a slow and complicated process. But there is another factor that cannot be ignored. Meghan Markle. For years, Harry and Meghan have presented themselves as a united couple. They left royal life together, they built their new life together, and they have faced criticism together. So if Harry were to move closer to his family again, what role would Meghan play? Would she be part of the reconciliation? Would she visit Britain with Harry? Or would Harry's relationship with his family develop separately from his wife's relationship with them? At this point, there is no confirmed answer. And it is important to remember that much of the discussion surrounding private royal relationships comes from media reports, unnamed sources, and commentary. The reality behind closed doors may be very different from the story presented in public. But one thing is clear. Harry's relationship with his family remains a subject of enormous public interest. And every time he returns to Britain, the same questions come back. Is this the beginning of a permanent reconciliation? Is Harry trying to rebuild his relationship with King Charles? Could his children eventually spend more time with their royal relatives? And perhaps the biggest question of all, could the Sussexes ever truly find a place within the wider royal family again? For King Charles, the situation presents a unique challenge. As a father, he may want a relationship with his son, but as king, he also has responsibilities to the institution he represents. The monarchy cannot operate purely on personal emotions. Every decision has consequences. Every meeting can become a headline, and every private conversation can potentially become the subject of public speculation. That is why any reconciliation would likely have to happen carefully and quietly. There is also the issue of Harry's security concerns. Security has been one of the major points of disagreement surrounding his relationship with Britain. Harry has repeatedly expressed concerns about returning to the UK without adequate protection. That issue has complicated his visits and has become part of the wider debate surrounding his future relationship with the country. But if Harry truly wants to rebuild his relationship with his family, there may come a point where the focus has to move away from the past and toward the future. Because eventually, something has to change. The current situation cannot continue forever. Either the distance becomes permanent, or someone takes the first serious step toward repairing the relationship. And perhaps that is exactly what makes the current situation so fascinating. For years, the royal family and the Sussexes have existed on opposite sides of an enormous divide. But now, there are signs that the distance may not be as permanent as it once appeared. That does not mean everything is suddenly fixed. It does not mean Harry and William are about to become close again. And it certainly does not mean that every member of the royal family is ready to welcome Harry and Meghan back with open arms. But it does suggest that the story may not be finished. Perhaps Harry is beginning to understand that no matter how far he travels, his connection to his family cannot simply disappear. Perhaps King Charles feels the same way. And perhaps the future of this relationship will depend on something that has been missing for years: silence, privacy, and time. Because if Harry truly wants to rebuild his relationship with his family, the biggest question may not be whether the palace will open its doors. The real question is whether everyone involved is finally ready to leave the past behind. For now, the world can only watch and wait. The royal family has survived enormous challenges before, but the story of Harry and Meghan remains one of the most complicated chapters in modern royal history. And if Prince Harry really is searching for a way back, the next move could change everything. This is Royal Crown Daily. Stay with us for the latest developments, stories, and updates from the British royal family.